was about to pull her daughter out of the dance academy for good when she opened the door and froze. Her 6-year-old, who hadn't spoken a single word in months, was spinning across the floor, laughing, and next to her, the janitor, holding an old speaker, tapping out a rhythm on the floor with a broom. He wasn't supposed to be there. He wasn't trained. He wasn't paid to teach, but he was the only one who had reached her. That moment shattered everything the millionaire mother thought she knew about her child and about herself. Let me know in the comments, where are you watching this from? Claire Whitmore didn't cry, not in boardrooms, not at doctor's offices, not even in the delivery room when her daughter was born 6 weeks early. She was the type who fixed things, who read 10 books before making a decision, who built her own company out of a spare bedroom, negotiated her divorce like a CEO, and renovated her entire kitchen during maternity leave. Her life was a calendar of logistics, color-coded, streamlined, optimized. Emotions had their time and place, usually in private, preferably scheduled. Her daughter Luna didn't follow calendars or patterns or expectations. By the time Luna turned 3, Claire had a spreadsheet of all the therapies, schools, diets and routines they'd tried. Nothing stuck. Luna didn't speak. She flapped her hands when she was excited, screamed when shoes were too tight, covered her ears at birthday parties. Claire told herself it was sensory processing, that she just needed the right input, that she could fix this. Doctors finally gave it a name: autism spectrum disorder. Claire nodded and asked all the right questions, took notes, Googled at midnight until her eyes burned. She wasn't sad, she was focused. She would get Luna everything she needed. But somewhere, quietly, something in Claire cracked, because no matter how much she gave, nothing seemed to bring Luna closer. Until the dance academy. It was her assistant's idea, a performing arts school just 20 minutes from their house. Prestigious, with marble floors and framed photos of tiny prodigies in tutus. Claire didn't expect miracles. She just wanted Luna to move, to be in a room with other children, to try something, anything that wasn't therapy. On the first day, Luna refused to wear the ballet shoes. She lay on the floor of the studio, humming to herself, while the other girls followed the teacher in a line of graceful pliés. Claire watched from the hallway through a pane of glass, arms crossed, forcing herself not to go in. The teacher, Miss Bloom, was patient, kind. She knelt next to Luna, offered her hands, but Luna didn't move, just rocked slowly, tapping the floor with her fingers. Claire smiled politely at the other mothers. Their daughters twirled and beamed. They whispered, "Is she okay? Is that the Whitmore girl? Maybe she's just shy." Claire ignored it. She noticed him the second week. He was just there, in the background, wearing navy coveralls, pushing a mop, adjusting the stereo, always quiet, always watching. He didn't say much, just nodded if she walked by. Black guy, maybe late 30s, clean cut, fit, always had headphones around his neck. She didn't think much of him at first. Another employee keeping the place spotless, but he noticed Luna. Claire saw him glance over every time Luna made a sound. When Luna started tapping a pattern on the mirror with her knuckles, he watched. When the music played and Luna didn't join in, he looked at her, not like a problem, but like someone who saw something he recognized. One day, after class, Luna wandered back into the studio while Claire was talking to the director about refund policies. Claire found her sitting on the floor, legs crossed, staring at a portable speaker. The janitor was nearby, sweeping. Luna reached out and touched the speaker, gently, like it was magic. Claire didn't think much of it, not yet. A week later, Ms. Bloom pulled Claire aside. Kind voice, tired eyes. "I'm so sorry. I think it's time we talk about whether this program is the right fit for Luna. It's not her fault, but it's hard for the other girls to focus when..." Claire shut it down, politely, firmly. "I understand, but we're not quitting." She didn't know what else to do. Every night she watched Luna spin in circles around the living room, humming to herself, tapping out rhythms on the furniture. Claire tried to join in once, tried to mirror her movements. Luna stopped immediately and curled into herself. Claire sat in the dark that night, a glass of wine untouched in her hand, wondering if she was losing her daughter a little more each day. And then something changed. She picked Luna up early one afternoon, and the receptionist told her the class hadn't started yet. Confused, Claire walked down the hall toward the studio and paused at the door. There was no teacher, just the janitor, Marcus, sitting cross-legged on the floor, and Luna dancing, not like the other girls, not structured, not rehearsed, but moving freely, her arms flowing like waves. Her eyes locked on Marcus, who held an old speaker in one hand, tapping out a slow rhythm with the other on the floor. Claire didn't move. She just watched. Something bloomed in her chest, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope, but also something else. Confusion, humility, a little bit of shame, because the person who had reached her daughter wasn't the expensive therapist, or the elite ballet instructor, or even herself. It was the janitor, the man she hadn't even asked the name of until that moment. And somehow he had done what no one else could. She didn't interrupt. She didn't make her presence known. She just stood there, hidden by the door, letting the rhythm fill the room. And for the first time in months, she felt like maybe she wasn't failing. Claire didn't bring it up right away. She didn't mention what she'd seen, didn't ask questions, didn't even talk to the director of the academy that afternoon. She simply took Luna's hand, walked her to the car like it was just another day, and tried to act normal. But her mind kept circling back to that studio floor, to the beat of a broom handle, to the way Luna had moved. Not perfectly, not like the other girls, but with something she hadn't seen in her daughter in years. Joy, expression, a spark of life that hadn't been coaxed out by all the carefully structured interventions and high-cost therapies Claire had so methodically arranged. That night, Claire sat at her kitchen table, scrolling through her emails, with her laptop open but unfocused, her thoughts slipping away again and again to that room. She thought about how often she had overlooked the man in the navy coveralls, how many days he'd been just another fixture in the background, cleaning up after everyone else's brilliance. She didn't even know his name until she asked the receptionist the next morning. Marcus Doyle, that was it. No title, no bio on the school's website, just Marcus, the janitor. Over the next few weeks, Claire started arriving earlier than usual. Not early enough to interrupt, but just enough to catch the last few minutes of what had clearly become a routine. Luna, alone in the studio, with Marcus nearby. Sometimes he'd bring a small bucket and drum softly. Sometimes he played slow rhythms from an old Bluetooth speaker, worn and taped at the edges. And Luna would respond, not always with grace, sometimes clumsily, other times just swaying slightly, but she responded. And more than that, she seemed at peace, in sync with something, with someone. Claire noticed the changes first in small, barely there ways. Luna stopped screaming during bath time. She let Claire brush her hair without flinching. At dinner, she began stacking peas into perfect symmetrical patterns, then paused to hum a rhythm she'd never made before. At night, when Claire tucked her in, Luna reached up and placed her hand gently against her mother's cheek. No words, just a moment. Claire nearly broke. Still, she didn't speak to Marcus. She didn't know how to bring it up. There was something about the way he carried himself, quiet, steady, that made her hesitate. He wasn't trying to be noticed. He wasn't asking for credit. He was just helping, without permission, without an agenda. And that, more than anything, made her nervous. Because for Claire, everything in life had always come with structure, with roles, expectations. She didn't know how to fit this man into her carefully managed world. But not everyone at the academy was as passive. It started with whispers in the waiting room. A couple of mothers who'd noticed Marcus spending more time in the studios than usual. Someone had seen him kneeling next to Luna, guiding her gently by the hand. Another parent muttered something about boundaries. By the end of the week, Claire was called into the director's office. The conversation was polite, but sharp around the edges. Ms. Hartwell, the academy's director, spoke with the rehearsed calm of someone used to dealing with wealthy parents. She expressed concerns about liability, about protocol. She said she'd received several comments from other parents regarding the janitor's interactions with students, particularly Luna. She said it wasn't appropriate, that it crossed professional lines. Claire sat perfectly still, her fingers laced tightly in her lap. She listened, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't have a rehearsed response. She left the office and walked straight to the studio. Luna's class had just ended. The girls were collecting their bags. Marcus was there, cleaning a mirror, avoiding eye contact. Claire waited until the room was empty before speaking. "I saw you with her a few weeks ago, after class." Marcus didn't turn around. Claire continued, "I didn't stop you because I didn't want to. I don't understand what you're doing with her, but it's working. I've never seen her like that." Now he turned, slowly. He didn't apologize. Didn't look nervous, just tired. "I wasn't trying to do anything," he said. "She just listened. That's all. The other kids, they don't, but she hears the beat." Claire was quiet. She didn't know what to say, so she asked the only thing that came to mind. "Were you a musician?" He nodded. "Drums, jazz, used to tour. Long time ago." She didn't press, didn't ask why he stopped. She could see in his eyes that it wasn't a short story. They stood in silence for a long moment before Claire finally said, "They want you to stop. The school. They're calling it inappropriate." Marcus shrugged, like he'd already expected it. That's how it usually goes. Claire felt something harden in her chest, a tightness, not just for Luna, but for him, for how easily people like him got dismissed, erased. "She's speaking in movement now," Claire said, "and no one taught her that, except you." Marcus looked at her, tired but steady. She already had it in her. "I just gave her rhythm to follow." The next day, Claire called the director's office. She wasn't calm. She wasn't composed. She used words she rarely used: bias, discrimination, inclusion. She threatened to pull Luna from the academy. More than that, she threatened to pull her foundation's funding from the school's arts initiative. That got their attention. But what really forced the issue was the video. Ms. Bloom, trying to be supportive, had recorded a short clip of Luna during one of her unofficial sessions with Marcus. A way to show progress. She emailed it to Claire privately, and Claire, after watching it a dozen times in her kitchen, sent it to the school board with a single sentence: "If you can't see what he's done for her, you don't deserve to teach here." There was a meeting. Several, actually. Policies were reviewed. Statements drafted. The word misunderstanding got thrown around more than once. Eventually, Marcus was allowed to continue his informal guidance under supervision. It was a compromise. Claire hated it, but she accepted it for now. Because what mattered wasn't how the school felt. What mattered was that Luna kept dancing, that she kept reaching toward the sound, that she was finally connecting with the world in a way no one, no expert, no professional had ever been able to unlock. Marcus never changed his routine. He still cleaned, still showed up early, still played music from that old beaten speaker. He didn't smile often, but when he watched Luna move, something in him softened. And Claire, for the first time in her life, learned how to step back, to let go of control, to stop trying to fix and simply witness. She began to arrive not just early, but quietly, sitting in the back of the studio, not taking notes, not documenting anything, just watching. Sometimes she cried silently. Sometimes she smiled without realizing it, because she wasn't just watching her daughter change. She was changing too. The showcase was scheduled for a Friday evening, just after sunset, when the light in the studio turned golden through the tall windows and made the polished floors shine like a mirror. The Academy had sent out formal invitations with embossed lettering, the kind Claire used to receive for galas or corporate retreats, but this one felt different, personal. It was the first time Luna's name had appeared on a program. Claire held the invitation in her hands for a long time before placing it on the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a tiny violin. In the weeks leading up to the event, Luna kept moving. Her rhythm became part of the house. She tapped patterns on the dining table while waiting for her cereal. She clapped to the beat of windshield wipers during rainy car rides. She swayed in the hallway when no one was watching. And every afternoon, without fail, she danced with Marcus. Sometimes Claire sat in the back, silent. Other times, she stood outside the studio, leaning against the doorframe, listening to the muffled pulse of the speaker and the soft thud of Luna's shoes on the floor. Marcus didn't speak much during those sessions. He didn't give instructions or explain what he was doing. He just watched Luna, responded to her movements, matched her pace, introduced sounds one at a time like invitations instead of demands. There were no mirrors during their time, no choreography, just rhythm and trust, a quiet language they had built between them. And though Luna still didn't use words, it was clear to everyone that she had found a voice. A week before the showcase, Claire sat with Marcus in the hallway after class. It was the first time they had a real conversation. The hallway was empty, the studio dark, just the two of them, sitting on a bench with the quiet buzz of a vending machine nearby. "Do you ever miss it?" Claire asked. "The music, I mean." "Performing." Marcus paused before answering. He looked tired, as he always did, but there was a calmness in him that didn't seem worn down, just weathered. "I thought I did," he said. "For a long time. I lost everything when I stopped playing. My band, my place, myself. I thought if I wasn't making music, I didn't matter." He glanced toward the studio, where Luna had left her little shoes by the wall. "But then she showed up, and I realized it's not about performing, it's about being heard. Even without words." Claire nodded slowly. She didn't ask for details. She didn't need them. Sometimes people's pain doesn't need to be dissected to be respected. She looked at Marcus differently now, not with pity, not even with gratitude, but with something deeper, recognition. The understanding that some people don't come into your life to teach or to heal you in the way you expect, but to reflect something back at you that you couldn't see on your own. The day of the showcase came quietly. No grand preparations, just Claire helping Luna into her pale blue dress, the same one she'd worn on that first day at the academy. It was a little shorter now. She had grown. Claire brushed her daughter's hair gently, tied it back with a ribbon, and watched as Luna tapped her foot in a familiar rhythm on the tile floor. At the studio, the seats filled up with parents and grandparents, phones held ready to record. The air buzzed with the usual chatter, applause, whispers, perfume. Claire sat near the front, hands clenched in her lap, nervous in a way she hadn't felt since pitching her first investor meeting. But this wasn't about performance. It was about Luna being seen. The earlier acts went smoothly. Tiny ballerinas in perfect pink formations, well-rehearsed duets, elegant solos. Then the lights dimmed for the final performance. There was no announcement, just a shift in the room, a spotlight, a pause. And then Luna walked onto the stage, alone. She stood still for a moment, the kind of stillness that made people lean forward in their seats. Then, from the side of the stage, Marcus appeared, not in uniform, but in simple black clothes, holding his speaker and a small djembe drum. He didn't take center stage. He sat on the floor, to the side, almost invisible, but as he began to tap, the room transformed. The beat was soft at first, measured, like a heartbeat. Luna began to move, slowly, deliberately, not in perfect ballet steps, but with a raw grace that drew the eye to every motion. Her arms curved like waves, her feet moved in sync with the rhythm, and her eyes, usually unfocused, locked on the sound, tracing it in the air like a compass. No one in the room breathed. There was no choreography, no symmetry, no spotlight tricks. Just a girl who had once been considered unreachable, and a man who had found her where no one else looked. When the final beat faded, Luna stopped moving. She stood still again, and the room erupted. Claire didn't clap, not right away. She couldn't. She was crying too hard to make a sound. She looked around and saw other parents with wet cheeks, others still blinking in disbelief, because what they had witnessed wasn't just a performance. It was proof that connection doesn't follow rules, that healing doesn't come in predictable packages, that sometimes the people we overlook are the ones carrying the light. After the show, people approached her. Compliments, questions, praise. Claire nodded politely, but her eyes were on Luna, who now sat cross-legged on the floor, smiling at Marcus as he packed up the speaker. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The conversation had already happened, in movement, in rhythm, in trust. The academy, moved by the reaction, offered Marcus a formal position as a rhythm coach for children with special needs. It wasn't just a title, it was recognition, and this time, no one could question it. Claire didn't stop being who she was. She still ran her company, still made lists, still believed in structure, but something shifted. She learned to make space, not just in her schedule, but in her heart. Space for silence, for the things she couldn't control, for the possibility that solutions sometimes come from the quietest corners. She also started something new, a foundation dedicated to inclusive arts programs, funding opportunities for children like Luna and for mentors like Marcus. People who didn't always have degrees, but who had something far more important: understanding. Luna kept dancing, not for stages, not for cameras, but for herself. Sometimes at home, sometimes at the studio, always to a beat only she and Marcus seemed to fully understand. And Claire, who once thought love had to look a certain way, measured, directed, earned, finally saw it for what it was: presence, patience, rhythm. Sometimes that's all it takes. If this story moved you, comment the word presence, because sometimes the greatest change begins the moment someone simply chooses to stay. There is a story here on the screen that will also move you. Press to watch. You won't regret it.